Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This video is covering Halloween themed books or spooky books. They all have strangers in them, so maybe like stranger encounters or unlikely visitors. This is the mug of the video. It says trick or treat yourself. Just a little something extra. So the books I have for you are The Little Old Lady Who Was Not Afraid of Anything, The Spider and the Fly, and lastly, we have The Wanderer. Also, I realized that I never include the author or artist name, so if you want to find that information, it will always be in the description. Okay, on to the first book. The Little Old Lady Who Was Not Afraid of Anything. There was an old lady who wasn't afraid of anything. She had a small cabin and a small garden. One evening, she sets out for the woods. She needs to find some berries and nuts. The deeper she goes, the darker it gets. Suddenly, she hears something behind her. Clomp, clomp. A pair of shoes clog along. Being in a hurry, she pays them little mind and continues on. Not long after, she suddenly hears wiggle, wiggle. Now she sees a pair of pants. Then comes a shirt. Shake, shake. Gloves. Clap, clap. And a hat. Nod, nod. Finally, a giant pumpkin head rolls into place. Altogether, they form a scarecrow that follows her right to her door. The old lady tells them, "I am not afraid of anything." So they ask what they should do. She gives them an idea. Now, out in her garden they stand, a scarecrow at last, chasing away the crows. So in the beginning of the story, we meet our main character in the comfort and safety of her own home. This place is warm and soft, but she has errands to run, so she needs to go into a foreign territory, which is the woods. But we see her reaction is calm and unfazed. So I think the story's primary message was holding fast to your foundation, especially when you're in a unknown or threatening territory. Let's talk about the illustrations. This book had a lot of jittery, thin line work, and it reminded me a lot of 90s comic strips, as well as the kids' book Miss Nelson is Missing by James Marshall. Because this style is so minimalistic, a lot can be communicated by small gestures. For example, how a character's eyebrows are raised, the shape of their mouth, or even the folds of the clothing. The spirit scenes reminded me of the book Stone Soup by Marcia Brown, where tossed food is illustrated midair. The illustration's main power was in the coloring. The warm golds and oranges fade into this shadowy blue and purple tone, but even when home disappears around the old lady, she still carries this warmth, one in her general attitude and disposition, but also in her actual coloring, the orange dress and the orange hat that she wears. In the end, when the old lady convinces the ghost to leave the forest, we see his colors warm up as he sits in the garden and is warmed by the sun. Book number 2 is The Spider and the Fly. "Will you step into my parlor?" the spider asks the fly, calling from his web. The fly shakes her head. She knows those who enter never come out. But the spider is persistent. He begins to charm her with promises of a soft bed, delicious food, and rest from her travels. Still, she rejects his offer. He then tries flattery, praising her bright eyes and her silver wings. Again, she flies away. The spider plans to weave his words more carefully, spinning them to precisely what she wants to hear. In doing so, the fly drifts closer, listening cautiously, but listening nonetheless. With one final compliment, she slips back into the parlor. With that, the spider springs, wrapping her tightly in his web. The sinister tale ends with a warning to the reader. Dear little children, who may this story read, to idle, silly, flattering words, I pray you ne'er give heed. This was based on a 1829 poem from Mary Howitt. It was a cautionary tale warning children of the danger of flattery words, how outward actions can distort and distract from one's inner character. The spider, whose entire goal was to eat the fly, uses charm and false promises to lure. So how can you reveal someone's intentions when you can't rely on their speech? The book points out two clues: body language and atmosphere. As a first impression, the spider greets the fly with a humble bow and closes his two eyes. However, just above these eyes lay four more eyes that are glued to their target. Looking at the atmosphere, the parlor at first glance is large and luxurious. The interior, however, is entirely made up of dead bugs. There's even a cookbook titled The Joy of Cooking Bugs. But the fly, preferring to believe the words, ignores all obvious signs of threat. This story warns not only against flatterers, but the part of ourselves that want to be flattered, a form of danger that starts from inside of us. These illustrations reminded me of a Tim Burton film, specifically his early short Vincent, which is where Frankenweenie comes from. Yeah, the line work is wiry and frantic, hands and hair ending in these crooked coils. Tim Burton's style is finding beauty in things commonly considered strange or ugly. There was something else that I couldn't put my finger on, and that's when I read the blurb on the back. The Most Charming Spider You'll Ever Dine With by Henry Selick. Henry Selick was the director of Nightmare Before Christmas, but also James and the Giant Peach. I forgot about this movie because we tend to suppress childhood trauma. But yeah, the bug movie. Talking bugs dressed in old-timey fashion. James and the Giant Peach. Obviously, there's a connection there. I also really like the book stack the parlor sat on. It reminded me of the stairwell to the house in the movie Psycho. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know how I do it. That was The Spider and the Fly. Alrighty, lastly we have The Wanderer. A small paper boat is set upon the water. The sea carries it across calm waves, where it drifts past fish and curious creatures. Soon, the waters grow stranger. Towering animals rise from the depths, and dreamlike cities appear on the horizon. Storms toss the boat, shadows loom, and still it sails on. Each page shows a new world, some bright and wondrous, some dark and unsettling. The tiny boat keeps moving, wandering further and further. After its long journey, the small paper boat finally drifts into a calm harbor. The little paper boat has arrived at its destination. The author website categorizes his illustrations as a play with symbols and connotations, never imposing a clear interpretation on the observer. So there you go. I'm just going to go into the illustrations because it's up to your interpretation, I suppose. There was a lot of dedication put into both the pattern work and the anatomy of each element. Some figures, like the fish, the cranes, and the factories, are recognizable. Many others are foreign, nonsensical, and dreamlike. This makes it hard to distinguish any kind of like creature hierarchy, what's dangerous, what's safe, and the general purpose of each creature's existence. Lastly, this book reminded me of Dr. Seuss' Midnight Painting collection. This wasn't released until he was dead because it had darker themes, one could say. Possibly some mental illness involved. But yeah, these bizarre, dreamlike worlds match Dr. Seuss's themes. I also thought the illustrations had elements of surrealism, the good kind. Salvador Dali's The Elephants. That one, I like that one a lot. And I found out people get that tattooed on their back, so that's interesting. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these Halloween books. If you guys have any recommendations for other themes, comment below. I get so many, so like I'll have to weed through them. I hope you guys have a good Halloween and a good Thanksgiving. Cheers!